Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview. Not many people have managed to land the words Nazi and funny in the same sentence. Charlie Chaplin did it in The Great Dictator. Mel Brooks did it in The Producers with the song and dance number Springtime for Hitler. And my guest today, the Emmy-nominated Larry Thomas, did it too. He's been an actor for 25 years and is a veteran of dozens of films, TV shows, and hundreds of theater performances. Larry recently filmed... You know what? I've got to start over. I'm sorry. I bet that hasn't happened to you recently. I mean to stop. Okay. Let's try this one more time. Sorry. This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview. Not many people have managed to land the words Nazi and funny in the same sentence. Charlie Chaplin did it in The Great Dictator. Mel Brooks did it in the... What was that?
What was what?
Oh, I got a... I'm getting a ton of static now. Well, there's technology for you, right?
Yeah.
All right, I apologize for this.
Okay.
Let me try it one more time. This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview. Not many people have managed to land the words Nazi and funny in the same sentence. Charlie Chaplin did it in The Great Dictator. Mel Brooks did it in The Producers with the song and dance number Springtime for Hitler. And my guest today, the Emmy-nominated Larry Thomas, did it too. He's been an actor for 25 years and is a veteran of dozens of films, TV shows, and hundreds of theater performances. Larry recently finished shooting the film Postal and was seen on Arrested Development, Hot Properties, Threshold, Scrubs, and a Lexus commercial as a crazed, pre-Bugsy visionary selling the idea of Vegas. Last year, Larry completed a 35-city, 140-show production of Neil Simon's The Odd Couple, the female version, starring Barbara Eden. So who the hell is Larry Thomas? No answers for you. Not yet, anyway. Be patient, my friends. You're not going to want to miss this interview. Larry, welcome to Mr. Media.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you today?
I'm very good, thanks.
Larry, I'm sure a few people recognized your name, but most probably won't. Could you end the suspense and tell Mr. Media listeners and readers the role for which you're most famous?
Well, you kind of gave the big hint yourself when you said the word Nazi and it was funny because I played the soup Nazi on Seinfeld.
It's hard to believe that was a real person. It was like a living, breathing cartoon.
Yeah, that's what I think was so great about it was there's nobody that could contest that and say, oh, there's not a guy like that. Because there really was.
Now, I understand when you took the role, you didn't know that there was a real person.
No, I didn't. I didn't even know it when we filmed it. I found out later, pretty much the same way everybody did, on the news, by the news media, playing comparisons to us all weekend long right afterwards. And, I kind of found the whole thing out later talking to the writer of the episode because he was a Letterman writer, and Soup Nazi was kind of their little secret. I mean, his restaurant was very popular in New York, but they were the ones that had made up that name. And it was kind of a Letterman writer's room kind of joke. And he told the joke to Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld when he first started working on the show, and they loved the idea of making it as an episode.
How surprised were you to find out that it was a real person?
I was really surprised. I mean, it just seemed to be such an extreme character, and it definitely seemed like, first of all, this was season 7 of Seinfeld, and I was already a Seinfeld fan, so it so seemed like something that would come out of the minds of that group, some ridiculous street character who you can't deal with, and who just so perfectly is a foil for them because, their big thing is that they can't pay attention to rules. And and can't follow any decent advice, and then here's this guy that demands that they follow his rules exactly. So it was kind of perfect, perfect fit.
Do you recall any of the Soup Nazis' rules?
The real guy, Al Yeganov, he has his, if I remember correctly, since that time I've been there, I think it's have your money ready, know your soup, and pay and step to the right, I think it is. Or to the left. I'm not sure. I'm trying to picture it in my mind when I was there and I actually saw them. Now, the rules, of course, on the TV show were embellished, just for comedy's sake, like speak your soup without enthusiasm in your voice, and, no extraneous dialogue and so forth, things like that. But, my goal, when I got the word that I was going to audition for a character called the Soup Nazi the night before the audition, and I didn't get anything written on paper, so I pretty much had to decide in my own mind what would a guy called the Soup Nazi be like. And I came amazingly close, to be honest with you. I even had a line similar to No Soup for You. I was saying no soup the night before, just thinking I might have to improvise. But when I got there the next morning and I saw the first 3 scenes, which were waiting for me, No Soup for You was right in there at the top. So it was just a real good marriage of my imagination, the real character. Spike Ferguson later said, years later, he said to me that, they were considering Tony Shalhoub and Richard Robertini and all these really popular actors that do those kind of characters. So he said, I walked in, and to him, I was just an angry New Yorker. And he said, that's the guy I want. And so he kind of went to the map with Jerry and Larry David and Andy Ackerman, and he just, he kept saying, I know those other guys are much bigger actors, but that's the guy I want. And so thank God for me, he went out.
Now, I'm curious about something you said earlier. How long after you did the show did you actually wind up in the real Al Yeganav's soup restaurant?
Well, the first, we did the show in 1995. The first time I saw him and his place was 1999, so that's 4 years later. I was doing a thing in New York, and Extra and Inside Edition were interviewing me, and we just happened to be right around the corner. And so they said, if we walk our cameras and stuff over to his place, would you come with us and see what happens? And I said, sure. So I came with him, and although he was ranting and raving about Jerry Seinfeld, who he thinks is totally responsible for, calling him the Soup Nazi, when they asked him what he thought of me, he said he thought I was a good actor, and he shook my hand. So he was never angry at me for some strange reason.
Do you think?
Because he's kind of a loose cannon,
Yeah. Do you think by that time he had cooled off a little bit about it?
Not really. He was still very angry when he talked about Jerry. But then, about 3 years later, in 2002, I was doing The Odd Couple at the Westbury Music Fair on Long Island, and we decided to take a day off in Manhattan. And I was actually running in Central Park, and on my way back, I passed by his place, and I decided to just stop in and say hi, and I did. And he was actually pretty nice to me. He actually gave me some of his soup. But all you need to do is get him on the subject of Jerry Seinfeld, and he gets white hot.
Now,
he doesn't know how TV is produced, so because the show is called Seinfeld, he thinks Jerry is the total sole responsible person for giving him that nickname.
Now, Larry, actors on a long-running TV series often fear, and rightly so, that they're going to be forever labeled by a certain character. Now, you achieved video immortality in one episode and then kind of relived it again later. Is that right?
Yeah. But, the funny thing about the cameo in the finale is, this may be some trivia, but the Seinfeld finale aired from, I think, like 9:15 to 11 p.m. on that particular Thursday night, which might have been May 14th or some date like that. And at 11 p.m., as soon as the finale was over, Frank Sinatra died.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing is that there was no news about the finale for the rest of that week. It was all Frank Sinatra related entertainment stories, and nobody really talked about the finale for a while. So, the first time I played the character, pretty much all hell broke loose. I was getting phone calls from all over the country later on that night saying, "Are you watching the news? They keep playing this clip from Seinfeld over and over again on the news and comparing me to some guy in New York." So that entire, from Thursday all through the weekend, I was one of the big news stories, at least entertainment-wise, And the funny thing is that after I played it again on the finale, I absolutely went into the most, largest form of obscurity you can, which is basically when something much more important happens, with Frank Sinatra. So I got to play the characters twice, and I got the two complete opposite reactions you can actually get.
Am I wrong?
So everyone...
I'm sorry. Am I wrong in thinking that most people believe that you were on that show more often than that one major episode? Because it's so embedded in people's memory of the show.
Yeah, that question I field second. Of all the questions that I get asked about the character, the first one being that everybody thinks that I really own a soup restaurant and whatever, they want to know where it is. But the second question I field most is, how many episodes were you on? And most everybody is amazed when they find out that it was really just one.
I was surprised, and in preparing to talk to you today, I looked it up. I thought it must be 6 or 7 times, and I guess first of all, it was 1995, right? And it's hard to believe it's been that much time because you've just made such an impression. Now, how has playing the Soup Nazi affected your career, both pro and con?
Well, on the pro side, because I think it's much more pro than con, it took an almost middle-aged, totally unknown character actor who had done, mostly non-paying theater for most of his career, and it put me out there into the guest actor category in big-time television, which, and the Emmy nomination helped out a lot, too. So that couldn't have been better. I mean, I was looking down the road of maybe never acting professionally and keeping it in local, theater here in L.A., which is akin to the off-Broadway in New York. So, on that part, it was very good for me. The only con side to it might have been that because of the popularity of the show and because of the extreme nature of the character, that was for a while all I could audition for were funny guys with foreign accents. So, and Middle Eastern terrorists, which, like I said, I didn't mind finally making money at the thing I had done for 15, 18 years, but I didn't get a shot at auditioning for lawyers and doctors and stuff like that on film or on one-hour dramatic TV. I had to spend quite a few years working into that stuff. And now I've got a few, one-hour shows on my resume, a few films, but it took a while. For a while there, I was just piling up all these TV guest spots, So it's mostly good.
Tell me about your appearance on Scrubs.
Oh, the story behind that is almost as funny as scene itself. I was on the set of Scrubs, and I was just visiting. A friend of mine was doing a technical job. They took over North Hollywood Hospital for their studio, and they have everything there. The writers are there, the casting is there, the offices are there, and a friend of mine was doing like a kind of just a job, security job, just watching the hospital, and I was visiting, and I was walking by the writers' room, the writers' conference room, and I watched the craft services person take a big plate of piping hot chocolate chip cookies in there. And I thought, ooh, I got to get some of those for my son. So it said cookies, craft services cookies in the set. And so I piled about 5 of these big, huge cookies up and wrapped them in napkins. And just as I turned to walk out of this little craft services room, Bill Lawrence walks out of the writer's conference room, looks right at me, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I put the cookies behind my back. I thought for sure I was going to be busted for stealing the writer's cookies on the set of Scrubs, which I had not, even auditioned for at that point. They were in their 3rd season. And so I just, I had the cookies behind my back, and I just said, "Oh, I'm just, hanging out with site rep." And he goes, "Yeah, but you're an actor, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, You're the soup Nazi, Mary Thomas, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, cool. Well, come on in. Let me introduce you to the writers." And, all I could think of was, how am I going to, get in there and keep these cookies out of sight? So I basically stood in the doorway. He walked in. I stood in the doorway. I stuck half my body into the room and, just wanting to get out of there as fast as I could. And one of the writers said, "Say the soup thing." And so, just wanting to get out of there really fast, and the line having become sort of a knee-jerk for me anyway, I just yelled, "No soup for you!" And all the writers, stopped in their tracks and just stared at me like I had just done something crazy. And for me, I do it 10 times a day anyway. So that's why they wrote that scene for me. I mean, the next day they called my manager and said they had written the scene for me to play myself on the show. But then when I was on the set, one of the writers came up to me and he goes, "Do you know how soon that scene was written after you left?" And an hour later, we had almost completed it.
Wow.
So, and just as a footnote, I did manage to back out of the room, get the cookies in front of me, and make my way down the hall without being caught.
And when you went back
so
to tape the segment, did you get more cookies?
Well, then I was allowed. If you're allowed, they tell you, take some of these home for your kids, whatever. That's why usually when I'm working on a set, I always take cookies home to my son, but this particular time, probably wasn't supposed to. So, but it was a really fun scene. I got to work with Zach Braff and Tara Reid, who was great. And it was the scene that you see isn't quite all that was there. Although I love what they kept in, something we filmed that they edited out. I liked a lot. I had in the scene that you see, Zach Braff says, "Aren't you the soup Nazi to Seinfeld?" And I say no, and then he says, "Say the soup thing," and I say no, and then he tries to trick me into it later. But what originally we filmed was he says to me, "Aren't you the soup Nazi from Seinfeld?" And I say no. I'm an accomplished character actor that has played many parts, and it's a little bit shallow to pigeonhole a guy in one single guest spot he did over 8 years ago, don't you think? And that's when he says, "Come on, say it." And I say, no. But they wanted to change the meaning of it to that I was denying being the soup Nazi at all. So they cut that speech. Which was a drag because Tara Reid was absolutely convinced that speech was going to change my whole career.
Oh, my.
She was talking about it all morning. She was going, "I just can't wait till Hollywood hears you say that speech on TV. It's going to change everything for you, and everybody's going to realize, that how much they've been typecasting you and all this." So,
now,
but that happens on TV.
Now, over time, you have, to some degree, played up to the Soup Nazis' notoriety. You do have the website. You do make convention appearances. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. Autograph shows. I do private, personal appearances, but I always do it as me. I always explain to whoever I'm appearing for that, that was 6 minutes of playing a character where most of the dialogue really belonged to the series regulars, and very well written. I said, I can't hang around for 2 hours here and be that character. First of all, he wouldn't talk. He's not a talker. Second of all, I said, I scare people because I didn't play it tongue-in-cheek or comedically. I played him very seriously. And so if people wanted to try to mess with me or anything, I would just yell at them. And they would just go, wow, what a jerk, and walk away. So I don't actually play the character when I do appearances and stuff. It's mostly just photo ops and, stuff like that.
Okay.
But I did try to get away from it for a while there at first, but I couldn't.
It's amazing. I mean, I think to most people, you are that person the same way, I don't know, Adam West is Batman, or, pick any character. And you played him for such a short time. It's so indelible. I just keep thinking about that. Last question about that, and we'll leave it alone. Is there anything else that you can tell us about being on the set the first time you played the character? Anything about interacting with the cast or behind the scenes?
Yeah, it was quite an eventful 4 days, and from getting cast in the first place, because I ended up in there the morning that they were going to go to work, and so they had to basically make a decision right then and there. And so, the first time round when I read for Jerry, he laughed his head off, and then they made me wait for about a half an hour, and I came in again, and he gave me some direction, and basically, long story short there, I started to walk off the lot, and they called my agent, who paged me, and said, go to stage 9 and go to work. And Jerry came up to me and he said, forget about the direction I gave you. Just do what you did when you walked in. That was funnier. So, number one, I immediately had a huge amount of respect for Jerry Seinfeld and his lack of ego as an executive producer. And then the first day, Jason Alexander and Julia Louis-Dreyfus were incredibly friendly as far as just welcoming me onto their set, because being a guest actor is very much like going to a new school. Every time you guest on a series, that first day is the same as walking into a new school, first day, don't know anybody, and everybody knows each other. And it's like that every time. So depending on how much the series regulars are friendly to you, it really makes the experience better. And those two people were just all over me with friendliness and right off the bat. And I mostly watched them. I didn't do much for the first 3 days because they didn't have the soup kitchen built. And the soup kitchen scenes were not the long scenes. The long scenes were the ones in Jerry's living room. So they really spend most of their time just, rehearsing their way through that stuff. And it was absolutely fascinating to watch. If you see the season 7 DVD, you'll see me telling a story about how I watched Julia Louis-Dreyfus just invent a moment that totally changed the scene, in this one particular scene that they were rehearsing. And basically, they were going to sort of face Jerry down about that schmoopy thing and how obnoxious it was. And she just decided that it would be funnier to let George start to do it, and then she would just sneak out the door, and just as he went, right, Elaine, the door closed and she was gone. And it was brilliant, and it was just fascinating to watch how by that time in the show, by season 7, they all just were so comfortable and felt like they could just try anything and create things. And then basically, I don't know, the only thing that was really a little tough that week is Michael Richards hated the script. And so he was a little vocal about it, which kind of made me feel a little bad, although, it wasn't like he was yelling at me or anything, but I did get to hear him going around, pretty consistently telling Jerry and Andy Ackerman and Larry David and everybody that he just felt it was a really bad script and they shouldn't do it.
Well,
so it's kind of like going back and forth. It was a good experience being on that show, but he had led me to believe pretty much that I was probably on the worst episode of Seinfeld that they were ever going to do.
Well, Michael's judgment has been seriously put in doubt by history, so,
Yeah, I later on heard that he pretty much was the opposite of what everybody else kind of thought, And, but, everybody's got their little quirk. Sure. But we, we just got into it, and we had not much trouble rehearsing it. That all happened pretty quickly. They were very quick people by that time, and they knew their characters. Like, one of the things people loved that Julia did in her first scene with me was to come in and start playing drums on the soup counter. And she did that very first rehearsal. It wasn't in the script or anything, but when they first did the first rehearsal of her scene with me, she just walked in and started doing that, which kind of immediately gave me something to react off of. So I didn't have to do much acting, you know what I mean? They really gave me a lot to react off of. And then, like I said, it went pretty smoothly. The audience really seemed to like it. It was kind of like posted through it. I can't say it was difficult at all. I'd like to say that the thing I did that stands out above all other things I've done was difficult in some way, but it wasn't. And, Larry David, in his infinite comedic wisdom, changed two things after the audience left, which just shows you how brilliant the man is, because the audience loved it. They gave me a huge ovation when I came out for my curtain call. And just before I left, Larry David stopped me and he said, I just want to do two things. And we went back to the set late at night. And the two things he changed was when Elaine does the Al Pacino impression, originally I just yelled, "No soup for you, come back 1 year." But he changed it to where when she does the Al Pacino impression, I say, very good, you know what? And she says, what? And then I yell, "No soup for you." So this gives him a little bit of a mischievous sense of humor. And then along that same note, the other thing he changed was the Spanish guy that said "por favor." Originally, I think I said "unacceptable" or something like that, and he changed that to "adios muchacho." So he basically, and then he said to me, I think the reason he did that is he said to me, "I love the way you face George when he's asking for more bread. Like you kind of look at him and softly say, you want bread?" And he goes, yes. And I go, $3. And he goes, yeah, the way you draw him in. So he obviously saw a little bit of sense of humor in the character that I did not intentionally put in there. Maybe a little bit of my sense of humor crept out, but I was thinking of the guy as a pretty humorless person. And Larry David saw a little bit of, of a mischievous sense of going to bait people in there. And he threw those two things in, which I thought were fantastic. And then basically it was a handshake, and I walked out the door of stage 9, and that was that.
But now, Larry, you were very gracious with the Seinfeld stories. I want to ask you, though, before we go, two things. I want to ask you first about being on tour with another TV icon, I Dream of Jeannie's Barbara Eden. How did that come about, and what role did you play in The Odd Couple?
Well, in the female version of The Odd Couple, they take the Pigeon Sisters and they turn them into the Costas-Huela brothers, who are these Castilian Spanish guys who speak like that with English, from that area of Barcelona. And so that's where a lot of the comedy comes from, and then the fact that they kind of destroy the English language as they go through the scene. And of course, Oscar and Felix are now Olive and Florence. And Barbara Eden played Florence. And the way it came about was basically just auditioning for it. Originally, they didn't want to bring me in on it because they didn't think I was good looking enough. And then my manager had, mentioned to them that, the Soup Nazi is pretty popular all over the country outside of Hollywood. And, having Larry in your cast can help. I mean, they were just, going to put the whole tour on Barbara Eden's name, and rightly so, that's all they needed. But they decided to give me a shot at it, and luckily for me, they liked the way I did the accent and did the character. So they cast me, and working with Barbara Eden was fantastic because, first of all, next to Barbara Eden, I wasn't getting all that much attention. This is pretty much her thing. I mean, as a, if you want to say fellow TV icon, she's a lot bigger of a TV icon. But she taught me some good lessons, The attention on her was unbelievable. She would be being searched in an airport, and while she had her arms, spread out and being wanded down, people would stand there with their cameras and go, "Can I take a picture with you? Can I take a picture with you?" So if you want to talk about, nobody really respects her privacy, and so she has become really good at spinning more than one plate. She's busy being searched, and at the same time, she's dealing with people that want to take a photograph with her. So she's spinning all those plates, but she's always good-natured about it. She's always nice to her fans. I mean, every night after every performance of every show, she would have to stand there with a line of people waiting at the stage door and sign autographs and talk to people. And we'd all get to jump in the van and go back to the hotel. So she was always very gracious. And then one day we were in an airport, and I said something to her about, you must be exhausted. And she said, "Well, it's my job. It's the job I chose, so everything that goes along with this job is part of it." And I thought that was a really neat thing for her to say. So, that's a lesson I definitely learned from her, was that it's just a job. And it could be a really fun job sometimes when you work. It's often been said about actors that we don't get paid for working, we get paid for waiting. And, so when you get to work, the pay is good, the treatment is great, the work is fun, but then, of course, that may happen 2 weeks out of the year, and for the other 50 weeks, you're beating your head against the wall wondering if you're ever going to work again. And I guess that's what you get paid for.
Right. Well, Larry, let's, before we go, I want to ask you about, you have a movie coming out in September called Postal. Can you tell us a little something about that? Yeah, I've got high hopes for Postal. Postal is a very irreverent and offensive political and social comedy, mostly political, but they attack certain social levels of, modern life in the United States as well. And it's actually based on a video game, and it's directed by a director, Uwe Boll, who's German, and spends most of his career taking video games and turning them into films, which he's been highly criticized for, especially by the video game fanatics. I've seen a few of his movies, the dramatic, serious ones, and sword and sorcery and whatever, and, I think that it's a very hard thing to do to please these guys that play these games. But when he got Postal, because of Postal's irreverent nature, it's kind of an adult video game, he decided to turn it around and do a comedy with very strong political statements, his own political statements. And it was a whole different experience for him. And it was a great experience for us because he basically went around looking for the funniest actors we could find. I'm in it, Dave Foley is in it, Vern Troyer's in it, a guy named Jack Ward plays the lead, who's really funny, and Seymour Cassell and David Huddleston and J.K. Simmons, and he just looked for actors that he could depend on to be funny, and he just let us go. And if there was anything at any moment in the film that one of us thought was funnier than the script,
almost 100% he let us do it. And at the end of every day, we would, leave the set feeling like we just laid down some of the funniest stuff. And so I had that going for me as far as my feelings about the film. And then I went and did some ADR on it about a month or two ago, and I loved the scenes I saw. It looked really good. The timing was really good in his editing. And I just have high hopes for it. The only couple of problems that it may face is, first of all, he's using a small distribution company. And what tends to happen is, like, he might get into a group of theaters, like, say, all AMC theaters or Pacific theaters or something are going to give his movie, a tumble. If suddenly Knocked Up, a movie like that, needs more screens, they're going to bump his movie out of there. So that's the only fear I have as far as the release goes. And then the other thing is, if the American public can laugh at themselves, both politically, socially, that kind of thing. We've been pretty touchy for a pretty long time now, especially since September 11th, 2001. And there is some humor in the movie that has directly to do with that tragedy. I'm of the opinion that like you said about the Nazis and Charlie Chaplin and so forth, that it's not really like us as Americans to be afraid to laugh in the face of the things that scare us. And, you talk about the Three Stooges, all Jewish guys, the Howard brothers and Mr. Fine, and they were doing Hitler parodies from 1938 on all the way through. And it's just really it's not like us for this amount of time to still say that hands off, you can't make fun of that. You can't make fun of the... I'll just give you a little hint in Postal. Pretty much, Osama and the Taliban are like a bunch of clowns in a small car.
I'd like to see that.
You know what I mean? We run around like not being able to all fit into the van and shooting bullets through the top of the van accidentally. I mean, so it makes it makes fun of the thing. And of course, I don't know if you mentioned it or I mentioned it, but I'm playing Osama bin Laden.
No, I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, that's who I'm playing. If you go to the website, the Postal the Movie website, there's 8 little talking head things that I do as Osama. Just little promos, either for the movie or just ridiculous, out-of-the-way things that we made up. But, it's a comedic Osama, and it's a comedic Taliban, and I'm thinking that when people see it, they will laugh at it, and the only people that will refuse to laugh at it are the people that are just too stubborn and set in their ways and, think that you just absolutely cannot laugh at that stuff.
Well, Larry, I'm going to interrupt you there. I appreciate all of your time today. And thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Media this week.
Great, you too. Thank you.
And folks, if you'd like to keep up with Mr. Media's interviews, you can subscribe to the site via email at www.mrmedia.com. You can also subscribe to the audio feed in the podcast section of iTunes. Thanks for joining us. Please come back next week for another Mr. Media interview. And we are out. Okay. Can I ask a huge favor? And it didn't occur to me until we were about halfway through the interview. Would you mind saying your line and saying "No soup for you, Mr. Media"?
Sure. Hold on. Now we are getting a little bit of static here.
Yeah, I hear that.
Let's try. I got to try the other phone. Okay, this one sounds like it doesn't have static. How's
much
it
better.
sound?
I'm sorry we didn't use that one before.
Oh, really? This is the one that people always tell me that they can't hear me on.
It's very crisp.
I didn't think of using this one. So you want me to just say "No soup for you, Mr. Media"? You want me to say this is Larry Thomas or anything, or just
you can
say the line?
absolutely say this is Larry Thomas.
Okay. Got an airplane going over. There it goes. All right, anytime? Okay. This is Larry Thomas with the Soup Nazi from Potsdam. Let me try that again. Hey, this is Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi from Seinfeld, and I just want to say, no soup for you, Mr. Media.
That was great. I'm sorry I asked you to do it, but I just couldn't resist. As I guess you get that
okay.
a lot.
I've probably done 100 of those for radio stations all over the country. Okay.
I really appreciate that. I will